So yesterday was obviously a historic day, the decision that came out of the Dáil. What are your first reactions to that?
Yeah, I think it was historic if you consider the conservatism traditionally of the Irish Dáil for a committee to recommend full repeal of the Eighth Amendment, to recommend abortion for health, risk to health, and also unrestricted access up to 12 weeks, which is obviously the foundation of a lot of abortion laws internationally, would cater for about 92% of people who have abortions now, with that just one measure alone. So I think it is definitely an important victory for those who've been campaigning, for young people in particular, for women who've been working to repeal the odious Eighth Amendment and to achieve real abortion rights. And I think if you examine 4 years ago, these same parties voted for a 14-year jail sentence for women for having abortions. So what's brought about the change? And I think it is down to the movement that's taken place outside the Dáil. I mean, the popular narrative from some in the traditional parties or in the media even is that the politicians went on a journey, heard medical evidence, heard this. Like, that's an important factor, but I think it's about timing, and I think that the political establishment had nowhere left to hide on this issue, that they simply couldn't ignore it and kick the can down the road once again because of the movement and the demand being so strong for this. And I also do think that the activism of not just the broad repeal movement, but some of the actions that we took in Rosa, in the Socialist Party, myself as well, highlighting the medical abortion pills. It was cited, actually, the abortion pills as being a critical factor in the decision of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael to move on this, because a number of their TDs and senators mentioned these exist anyway, women are accessing these pills, women are taking them, somebody could, we now have to regulate, somebody could have an accident or a casualty or whatever. So they were using that as their legitimacy for taking on something that they've traditionally turned their back on and swept under the carpet. And I think the fact that we made the pills available to assist women was very important. The use of the pills tripled, and I'm not just putting it down to our actions, but definitely it did assist in the widespread knowledge, more widespread knowledge about safe medical abortion pills and the Women on Web service in particular. And again, that was very important evidence on the committee too, which was cited by some of the politicians. And we were criticised by some for taking those actions. We were told we would actually, by exposing this, we were highlighting to the state and allowing them to clamp down and potentially affect the supply. Look what would have happened if we just stayed quiet. And I think it shows that extra parliamentary and civil disobedience is critical as well. So the abortion pill train 2014, the abortion pill bus the two buses that we organised, and the drone actions and so on were all definitely important factors in achieving this outcome, and credit should be given for that.
Absolutely. Ruth, you were saying that now a lot of these politicians can no longer continue to kick the can down the road, but it appears from the vote that some of these parties still are. So I was hoping that maybe you could comment a little bit on that.
I think it was very noticeable that Sinn Féin were the only party in the Dáil that was represented at that committee that didn't actually vote for the 12 weeks on request, that didn't have some of their members at least voting for it. And I think they had to abstain rather than vote against, because I think the criticism that would have been heaped on them if they'd voted against, their excuse obviously is that their party position is for much less. But why is their party position for much less? I mean, how long do they need to come up to what's necessary, what's needed to deal with the reality of abortion and also where public opinion is? I think Sinn Féin have been badly damaged. I think they've been left behind once again on a particularly important issue for people, for young people and women in particular. and I'm sure that there will be repercussions, within their party among some of their newer members about this. And I think, they took a decision at their Ardèche to move on health, but health was never about broad access. That was only going to be for particular cases. And they've sat and listened to the same evidence on the committee as all the other members of the committee who did move in their positions. And I think it's a poor reflection on them that their position is so behind.
Absolutely. We saw that the pressure has really flipped a lot of the major parties. What do you think will happen when this goes to a vote ultimately in the Dáil?
Well, when this comes back to the Dáil, the full Dáil, obviously it's going to be more difficult, because to persuade people on a committee who are listening to evidence, who are taking part in a long, wide-ranging discussion, I think ultimately it will be about keeping the pressure on from outside, as this is what's brought this about. So, people in constituencies contacting their TDs to support this, saying that, look, enough is enough. We can't sweep the issue under the carpet any longer. We should support the measures that were recommended by the Citizens' Assembly, that were supported in opinion polls, that were now being recommended by the committee. But I think there's no doubt the Catholic right will try to use the debate in the Dáil as their chance to roll back and water down some of the recommendations. And we have to be really vigilant about that. The pro-choice movement, the repeal movement, has to keep up the pressure and consider mobilisations as well to ensure that we